Next time you hear Lagos boys, you will run. Hello family, before we start this intriguing story, we would like you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified once we drop new story. Also comment the time you are watching this and country you are watching from. It was said that if you stood close enough to Charles's mansion at night, you could hear whispers carried by the wind, soft, eerie voices that seemed to echo from within the towering walls. But no one ever dared to find out if the stories were true. In Benin City, Charles wasn't just another rich man, he was a legend draped in mystery. From the outside, his home looked like paradise. Tall white pillars, imported marble tiles, a fountain that sparkled like diamonds under the sun. His compound was so massive that people often mistook it for a private resort. Yet, no one had ever spent the night there. Not staff, not friends, no one. The people who worked for him, his chef, driver, gardener, came every morning and were dismissed by sundown. The rules were clear, no one stays after dark. But why? Charles had it all. At just 33, he was the owner of 3 five-star hotels, 2 nightclubs, multiple real estate investments, and an exotic car collection that could shame a prince. Women swooned when he walked past. Men either envied him or wanted to be him. He was always well-dressed, never a hair out of place, his face clean-shaven and his perfume lingering even minutes after he left a room. But despite his wealth and desirability, Charles was a man of few words. He rarely appeared at social events. When he did, he came alone and left quickly. He's just private, some said. No, he's hiding something, others whispered. 5 years ago, a girl named Precious, just 19, caught Charles's eye. She was the daughter of a palm wine tapper from a small village on the outskirts of Benin. When Charles arrived in his Range Rover and asked her parents for her hand in marriage, it was like a miracle. He gave the family a brand new bungalow and a business loan worth millions. The wedding was grand. Guests came from Abuja, Lagos, even Ghana. Social media couldn't get enough of the fairy tale marriage. But just 6 months later, Precious was dead. Complications during pregnancy, Charles had explained, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses at the burial, which took place inside his compound. There were no questions. After all, who would dare question a man as powerful as Charles? 3 months later, he married Esther. She too died during pregnancy. Then came Aisha, a university graduate with big dreams. Dead within 5 months. Nobody raised an eyebrow. The women's families had all been paid off handsomely. In each case, Charles handled everything, hospital bills, funerals, compensation. But beneath the polished surface, something darker was at play. One evening, an old security guard who used to work the mansion's gate spoke to a journalist off record. "I left that job because of what I saw," he said, voice trembling. "What did you see?" the journalist asked. He paused. At exactly 2 a.m. every night, Charles would go to the locked room beside his master bedroom, with a shovel. The journalist leaned in, eyes wide. What was he digging? The guard looked straight into the camera. "I don't think he was digging. I think he was feeding something." Jumoke arrived in Benin with nothing but a suitcase full of dreams and a smile that could stop traffic. She was 24, sharp-minded, and determined to make a name for herself. Life had been tough in her village, but she believed a new city meant new beginnings. When she first met Charles, it felt like fate. She was selling Ankara fabric outside a mall when a black Bentley pulled up. The driver opened the door, and out stepped a man she had only seen in newspapers and Instagram blogs. "Keep the change," he said, handing her a wad of cash far exceeding the price of her fabrics. She stood frozen. From that moment, Charles returned to her store regularly, always polite, always alone. Flowers followed. Then gifts. Then promises. Within 3 months, Jumoke was wearing a diamond ring and moving into his mansion. To outsiders, she was lucky. To her, it felt like a fairy tale. But soon, that fairy tale began to twist. From the day Jumoke moved in, she noticed something strange. The house was too quiet. Despite its size, it was always empty. No cooks. No cleaners. No noise. Charles claimed he preferred privacy, and Jumok, initially flattered, agreed. But the rules were strict. No entry into the west wing. Never open the basement door. No guests. Ever. And most importantly, don't ask questions. At first, she obeyed. After all, she was in love. But love began to give way to suspicion. One evening, while Charles was out of town on business, Jumok wandered through the house. Curiosity led her to the west wing, the part of the house Charles always avoided. At the end of a long hallway, she found the locked door. It was old, wooden, and had deep scratch marks near the bottom, as if someone, or something, had tried to claw its way out. She leaned in. A soft sound whispered through the crack. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't the wind. It was crying. She jumped back, heart racing. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. She tried it. Locked. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. No one. She ran. The next day, Jumok went through Charles's wardrobe while cleaning. Hidden behind a row of expensive suits was a dusty red book. The pages were handwritten in a strange language, with symbols, drawings of pregnant women, and rituals involving human blood. At the back of the book was a list. 1. Precious. 2. Esther. 3. Aisha. 4. Bimbo. 5. Adebi. 6. The seventh name hadn't been written yet. Jumok dropped the book, her breathing shallow. Oh my God. That night, Charles returned home early. He walked in, unusually calm. Jumok tried to act normal, but her fear was written all over her face. Charles looked at her closely. Have you been exploring? She swallowed hard. No, why? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're looking a bit pale. Perhaps it's time we started trying for a baby. Her blood ran cold. Jumok barely slept that night. Every shadow felt alive. Every creak in the walls made her heart leap. She knew now, without any doubt, that Charles was not the man he appeared to be. The red book, the scratched door, the list of names. She was next. The next morning, she packed a small bag and attempted to leave the mansion. But as she reached the front gate, two unfamiliar men in black suits blocked her path. Where are you going, madam? One of them asked, polite but firm. I just want to get some fresh air, she said. No one leaves without Ogre's permission, he replied. Jumok's stomach dropped. She was trapped. That night, Jumok had a terrifying dream. She was walking through a dark hallway. The doors whispered her name. When she turned, she saw 5 pregnant women in white gowns, pale and lifeless, reaching out to her. You must leave, they said in unison. He'll do it again. She woke up screaming. Charles was standing at the edge of the bed, watching her. Bad dreams, he asked, smiling faintly. It happens in this house. She could barely respond. He bent down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, You'll feel better once you're carrying my child. She knew she had to act fast. Desperate, Jumok searched the house for something, anything, that could serve as evidence. In one of the guest rooms, she found a power outlet that wasn't working. Out of curiosity, she pulled it out, and behind it, she discovered a tiny hidden camera with a memory card. Her hands shook as she inserted the memory card into her phone using a converter. What she saw nearly made her vomit. Clips of each wife, screaming, crying, begging. And then, silence. In one of the videos, Charles was holding a knife. In another, he was kneeling before an altar surrounded by candles, chanting in a language she couldn't understand. A blood-stained idol stood in the center. Jumok covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Her hands trembled as she saved the files and backed them up to an online folder. Now she had proof, but getting it to the outside world was the challenge. The next evening, while Charles was showering, Jumok slipped outside with her phone. She ran to the back of the compound where there was a crack in the fence and slid her phone through it, hidden in a plastic bag. A group of young boys usually passed there in the evening. She left a note. Please take this phone to the nearest police station. Someone's life is in danger. Then she ran back inside before anyone could see her. That same night, Jumok heard the noises again, cries, moans, and then, chanting. Unable to resist, she crept down the hallway and found the basement door slightly ajar. Her feet moved as if not her own. She descended the stairs, one slow step at a time. The smell was foul, like rotting meat and blood. And then she saw it. The basement was a ritual chamber. In the center was a stone table, stained dark. Around it were portraits of women, Precious, Esther, Aisha, and an unfinished portrait of her. Charles was standing with his back to her, dressed in a red robe. He was speaking in tongues. He didn't notice her. She gasped, and he turned around slowly. You weren't supposed to see this, yet. Jumok turned and bolted up the stairs, but it was too late. Charles's guards were waiting. She screamed and kicked, but they overpowered her. Lock her in the red room, Charles ordered coldly, his voice now stripped of all charm. It's almost time. They dragged her into a windowless room with blood-red walls and threw her inside. The door slammed shut behind her. For the first time since she met Charles, Jumok felt she wouldn't survive. But she also knew, if she didn't get out, no one would ever know the truth. Meanwhile, Charles returned to the basement altar. He stood before the same stone idol, an ancient figure carved with symbols of fertility and death, its mouth open in a permanent scream. He began to speak to it. 6. I've given you 6, he whispered. One more, and the deal is complete. I will not grow old. I will not fall sick. I will reign forever. Suddenly, the room darkened. Shadows twisted on the walls. A voice filled the air, not human, but deep and ancient. You broke the rule, Charles. The seventh must come willingly. She suspects. She runs. She fears. You failed. Charles trembled. No. No, I can still fix it. I'll make her stay, she'll see reason. Then make her carry the child. Or your life is forfeit. The air turned cold. The idol's eyes gleamed red. Charles fell to his knees, gasping. Back in the red room, Jumok heard a soft knock on the wall. She leaned in. A whisper. You're not the first. Jumok's eyes widened. Who's there? A voice, the woman, responded through the vents. Precious. I died in this house. So did Esther. Aisha. Bimbo. We are still here. Our bodies are buried beneath the altar. But our spirits, we linger. Jumok shivered. Why? Why did he do it? And then came the truth. Charles had made a pact with an ancient demon 20 years ago. The deal was simple: every 7 years, he must sacrifice 7 pregnant women to gain another 7 years of wealth, power, and youth. Each woman had to die during pregnancy, and their spirits bound to the house forever. He had already sacrificed 6. Jumok was the 7th. Just when hope seemed lost, Jumok heard loud voices outside. Police. Open the gate. The phone she'd hidden had worked. The boys had delivered it. Charles's guard scrambled. He panicked. His ritual wasn't complete. Jumok screamed and banged the walls. An officer stormed the house. One of them kicked down the red room door and pulled her out. Arrest that man, she shouted, pointing at Charles, who tried to flee through a hidden passage, but it was too late. He was caught. In custody, Charles sat calmly, as though nothing had happened. You won't understand, he told the officer. I gave them beautiful lives. Then I gave their lives for something greater. They forced him to confess. The remains of the 6 women were exhumed from beneath his altar. Photos. Wedding certificates. Their rings. Everything was found. The case shook the entire city of Benin. What stunned the people most wasn't just the murders, but that Charles was over 60 years old, yet looked 35. He had cheated death for decades. Not anymore. Absolutely. Here comes the intense episode 5, where justice begins to unfold, but darkness still lingers. Charles sat alone in his prison cell. Despite the metal bars and concrete walls, he was calm, too calm. Other inmates avoided him. Guards whispered stories. People said he spoke to shadows. Some even claimed to hear a baby crying at night near his cell, though no child was anywhere nearby. One morning, a warder brought Charles food, only to find the food rotting, fresh rice turned to maggots, stew bubbling with flies. The smell was unbearable. Charles simply stared, smiling. The officer dropped the tray and ran. That night, Charles woke up gasping. The cell temperature dropped, and a thick black mist seeped through the wall. From within the mist, the idol's shape formed, glowing red eyes fixed on Charles. "You failed me." Charles dropped to his knees. "I gave you 6, please. Just one more chance. There are no second chances. You broke the bond. The debt is now your soul." Charles screamed, writhing on the floor as the mist engulfed him. His cries echoed through the entire prison block. The next morning, guards found him unconscious, bleeding from his eyes and nose. Doctors were called, but none could explain it. They found no pulse, but Charles was still breathing. It was as if life refused to leave him, but so did death. Meanwhile, Jumok was placed in a safe house under tight police protection. She was pregnant, but the stress of the past weeks had taken its toll. Doctors monitored her closely. The press hounded her for interviews. Human rights groups called her a hero. But Jumok was quiet. She still had nightmares, visions of Charles, of the basement, of voices calling her from beyond. Sometimes, when she looked in the mirror, she felt like someone was watching her from behind her own reflection. Charles, though physically weak and barely conscious, was dragged into the courtroom for his trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The video files Jumok found. Testimonies from staff who noticed his wife's vanishing. The remains buried beneath his mansion. His confession to police, recorded and played before the court. People gasped when his real age was revealed, 62 years old. No one could believe it. His youthful looks had always been part of his charm. Now, they saw it for what it was, evidence of something unnatural. The judge ordered that Charles be held until a final verdict was delivered, but warned that his crimes went beyond human law. That night, as the rain poured heavily over Benin, Charles whispered to himself in the cell. "I cheated time. I cheated death. I gave them what they wanted." A rat scurried into the cell and instantly dropped dead. The guard on duty turned away for just a moment. When he looked back, Charles was no longer moving. His body had shriveled like dried leaves. His skin, once smooth and youthful, was now cracked and gray. His eyes were open, but lifeless. The demon had come to collect. It had been 3 months since Charles died in custody. The trial never reached its verdict. Some said justice was served by a higher force. Others believed the devil came to collect what belonged to him. Either way, Benin could finally breathe. But Jumok couldn't. She often woke up gasping, her hand on her belly, fearing the spirits were still watching her. Her pregnancy was now 6 months along, but she remained restless. Then one day, she received a letter from the authorities. "Demolition begins tomorrow at the Charles estate. You are invited to witness it." Jumok hesitated, then decided she had to see it fall. Police officers, journalists, engineers, and curious neighbors gathered outside Charles's mansion. The once beautiful compound now looked cursed, cracked walls, dying flowers, and a cold wind that refused to stop. Jumok stood in front, arms folded, watching. 3, 2, 1. The first part of the structure collapsed under the weight of the bulldozers. As the concrete broke, something horrible was uncovered, a hidden chamber beneath the mansion, a crypt lined with ritual markings and personal belongings of the murdered wives. Jumok screamed. Inside were 6 headstones, each one with a name she knew. Precious. Esther. Aisha. Bimbo. Adeobi. Tolu. Candles still burned. Their pictures hung on the wall, frozen in time. And then, a cold breeze blew across the site. That night, Jumok sat alone in her room when the lights flickered. A gentle wind brushed her cheek. And then, 6 women appeared before her, glowing faintly, dressed in white. They didn't speak with mouths, but their thoughts filled the air. Thank you for surviving. You ended what we could not. Now we can rest. Jumok wept. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Precious stepped forward. You saved the future. Let your child live freely. Teach them the value of truth. And one by one, they vanished, their souls finally at peace. Months later, Jumok gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Olifomileo, which means, God has given me joy. The city healed slowly. The Charles mansion was turned into a memorial park, honoring the 6 women who lost their lives to ritual darkness. People visited often, reading their names, lighting candles, and praying against such evils in society. Jumok was offered speaking opportunities to raise awareness. She turned her pain into purpose. Moral lesson. Evil may hide behind charm, wealth, and power, but the truth always finds light. Never be blinded by riches, seek to know the soul behind the smile. And when your instincts whisper, listen. They just might save your life. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos like this.